You own XRP, you are being scammed. And in addition, the team behind XRP is evil. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. They are evil. Right. So if you log into crypto Twitter or Bitcoin X or whatever you want to call it, all you're going to see right now, literally it's wall to wall absolute vitriolic hatred toward XRP and Ripple Labs, the company that behind that. So why is that? Well, because the team behind XRP is actively working to undermine and derail a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The entire premise of XRP well, let me say Ripple Labs is trying to get the world to adopt central bank digital currencies, a CBDC, central bank digital currencies. Their business model is for Ripple Labs to be the enabler of central bank digital currencies, for those to be built on the technology of Ripple Labs. Now, how are they in business when CBDCs have been such a complete and total failure so far worldwide? The answer is the XRP token. The XRP token is not tied to the equity of Ripple Labs. It's not tied to anything. They literally made up 100 billion of them and are just dumping them on naive and unsuspecting people, which is why if you own XRP, you are like actively being scammed right now. So here's how it works. Number one, they make up 100 billion out of thin air. Numbers two, they build an entire hype machine around the XRP token so that people that don't really understand how it works or what value it might have, which is zero, will get sucked into the hype. They then systematically dump the XRP token on the naive and unsuspecting people who have not figured out how the scam works yet. And they are trusting that those people will stay dumb long enough for them to get exit liquidity. Exit liquidity is when you need to dump your thing on someone else and you need those people to buy it. Otherwise, you get stuck with it and there's nothing you can do. Now, nobody in Bitcoin is looking for exit liquidity. One second. For two reasons. One, if you want to sell your Bitcoin anytime, there's $10 billion of liquidity, probably $40 billion of liquidity a day in Bitcoin. There's not a single person in the world that can't get all the liquidity they want on Bitcoin. Two, people who buy Bitcoin hold it. They hold it because it's valuable. People who own XRP they're getting scammed by Ripple Labs, but they're also in it so that they can ultimately scam someone else by dumping the token on them. I don't know anybody that plans to hold XRP as generational wealth. Doesn't happen because it's a scam token. So anyway, the history of the XRP. So why do I say they're evil? Well, in the last 4 years, there was only one company and their team that was all in on Kamala Harris and anti-Bitcoin every step of the way. And they donated $10 million to try to get Kamala Harris elected. Um, Everybody else was either neutral or in favor of Kamala Harris. And the reason for that was because Kamala Harris and Joe Biden had been very unfavorable. They had essentially done everything in their power to stand on the oxygen hose for the digital assets industry and for Bitcoin. They had tried to cut off the oxygen supply. They had, the FDIC had sent letters to banks threatening them to cut off services if they didn't debank crypto related companies. So essentially anybody connected to the cryptocurrency industry, if they didn't cut off banking relationships, that the FDIC was threatening to basically do bad things to them. And all of these letters finally came out. Finally, Coinbase won, and Coinbase obviously is, some of the best people in the industry. Coinbase won a federal lawsuit and got the records by the FDIC released. Anyway, very bad actors on all sides. And the only team that was in on Kamala winning was the XRP team because they believed that Kamala would bring a central bank digital currency, which is a digital dollar that can be centrally tracked and controlled by the U.S. government. Had they gotten their way and had there been a central bank digital currency, then anyone who used that currency would be monitored by the government. Every transaction they make would be monitored by the government. The government would have complete control over the finances of that individual. The government could drain funds from that person's bank account if it was stored in a central bank digital currency and they thought the person was not spending their money fast enough. They could cause the money to melt in the person's bank account. They could monitor their transactions. They could make decisions for the person. For example, you're not allowed to buy guns with your US dollars, and suddenly your money just stopped working at gun stores. It was absolutely insane. And there was one company that was behind all that and supporting all that and in favor of that approach, and that was Ripple Labs XRP. That team is evil. They stand against every value that Bitcoiners stand for. The team behind XRP is evil. They are self-serving, they are scammers, and they are scamming everybody who's buying XRP tokens. If you are buying XRP tokens, you are exit liquidity for scammers. You are the person that is letting them dump their crap on you, and you're the one giving them your Bitcoin or your hard-earned, US dollars, whatever it is you own. If you are buying XRP, you are liquidity, exit liquidity for scammers. So it's an awful, evil team that is behind it. Additionally, one of the co-founders donated $5 million to Greenpeace to with a mandate that they had to use it to undermine Bitcoin by attacking Bitcoin mining. Now, Bitcoin mining, the way Bitcoin mining works is it uses energy, which is the only way you could actually secure an audit, secure an actual cryptocurrency network. It's the only way that actually works. None of these other systems actually work. So the only way to secure the money of the world is by tying it to something finite, like electricity and computing power, which is why Bitcoin is, but why Bitcoin is audited and secured by Bitcoin miners. Well, one of the co-founders of Ripple Labs, the company behind XRP, gave Greenpeace $5 million to attack that and basically demonize Bitcoin, claim it had environmental impacts that it did not have, run an entire anti-Bitcoin campaign. And they did that because Bitcoin is the biggest threat to a central bank digital currency. XRP wants a central bank digital currency, and Bitcoin was a threat to them getting what they wanted. And they thought the easiest way to undermine Bitcoin was to attack its foundations of its security. Now, XRP does not have that security. The XRP ledger, the XRP blockchain, is completely bloated. It is such a morass of stupidity that there's no conceivable way that the average person could ever run it. The blockchain, the XRP blockchain, they somehow lost the first 32,000 blocks. So if you want to authenticate and validate the XRP blockchain, you have to start at block number 32,000 and something, because all the blocks, the validators for the blocks before 32,000 are lost, like due to a software glitch. So nobody has the first 32,000 blocks of the XRP blockchain, which is just ridiculous. Everything about it is absolute insanity. Now, you may be thinking, well, hey, it's a scam, but you're going to get out before it all crashes. Well, look, then you're like an idiot who's invested in Bernie Madoff, who's like, look, I know Bernie Madoff is scamming everybody, but I think I'm going to get my money out before the whole thing, collapses like a house of cards. That's an idiotic way to run your life. If you are in XRP and you know it's a scam, and you just think it's going to go up before you get out, that is just the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Don't ever invest in something that you know is a scam, that you think you're going to rug pull somebody else before they rug pull you. That's crazy. And it is an absolute shame that way too many people have not figured out that XRP is a scam and they are getting scammed. As I said before, if you own XRP, you don't own shares in Ripple Labs. If they get their way, the people behind XRP will be fabulously wealthy. If the world is run on government controlled digital currency that was enabled by Ripple Labs, the people behind Ripple Labs will make a ton of money. You will not, because XRP does not represent stock in Ripple Labs. XRP is a beat coin. Fill in the 4-letter word coin. Pick any 4-letter word of your choice, fill in that, and then add the word coin on the end of that. That is what XRP, it's a blank beat coin. That's what it is, and you're being scammed if you own it. So, again, if you don't believe me, log into, whether you want to call it crypto Twitter or Bitcoin X, log in right now, and all you will see is wall-to-wall vitriolic hatred being spewed at XRP and Ripple Labs because everybody was willing to sort of, focus on their own thing instead of, attacking Ripple and XRP. until finally the last straw is now the team behind Ripple and XRP is trying to undermine a strategic Bitcoin reserve. They're trying to keep the United States government from recognizing Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset because it keeps them from going down the road of a central bank digital currency, which is what XRP ultimately the end use case for XRP is they're trying to get central bank digital currencies. So in other videos, I've talked about just the fundamentals of why the whole thing's a scam or why the economics of XRP make no sense. But with this latest action in Washington, D.C., the whole Bitcoin community feels like they've officially gone too far and they've moved from scammers and bad actors to pure evil. And now they are actively trying to undermine what everyone else in the Bitcoin community is trying to accomplish. And it's just evil. The last time something like this happened, just for some historical context, let me give you a second. Let's remember the last coin that went to zero in a big way that looked exactly like this was the FTT token, which FTX had done the exact same thing as Ripple Labs. They had, generated this FTT token out of thin air. It was the complete junk token. It didn't represent anything. And they had sold it to a bunch of people and were using it as collateral and then borrowing against it and doing all sorts of shenanigans. Well, one of the biggest holders of that coin was Binance. Binance is the largest cryptocurrency exchange internationally. Coinbase is the largest cryptocurrency exchange in the United States. But outside of the United States, Binance is the largest. And the Binance was happy to hold this junk token because they were basically like, whatever, FTX is just doing their thing. It's not our job to go police, stupidity. But they crossed the line when they caught Sam Bankman-Fried lobbying behind their backs in Washington, D.C., which is exactly what's happening with XRP right now. XRP and their lobbyists got caught lobbying behind the backs of everybody else in Washington, D.C., trying to undermine a strategic Bitcoin reserve and trying to lay the foundations for a central bank digital currency. They got caught. Well, what happened when Sam Bankman-Fried got caught is Binance dumped the FTT tokens. And when Binance dumped the FTT tokens, it basically drove the price so far down that FTX got margin called on all this other stuff because now something that they were claiming had many billions of dollars of value, the mask came off and it was clearly identified as basically a scam token. And then the whole thing collapsed. So I would not be surprised if the same thing happens with XRP. Now, look, Bernie Madoff kept going a lot longer than people thought he could. I mean, the guy that kept telling the SEC that Bernie Madoff was a scam, he was telling the SEC for years and years and years before the whole thing finally collapsed. So I'm not saying the scam might not go on longer. I'm just saying it is a scam and the people behind it are evil. So it's a scam and the people behind it are evil. If you own the XRP token, you are being scammed. If you plan to dump your XRP token on someone else, you are scamming them. I don't know why you would throw your lot in with with the most evil actors in the crypto sphere. Now, again, there's, in the world of crypto, I think they would say in Dante's multiple levels of hell, the last level of the figurative, Dante's level of hell is reserved for XRP and the team behind Ripple. Other tokens at least will acknowledge they're a scam or that there's no value. Look, all the meme coins, even the ones that were launched, earlier this week or last week, look, they're very clear on their website that this thing has no value. They are at least upfront about that. Everybody who's buying a meme coin, they know that they're doing it to either support the cause of whoever's selling it or because they're just degenerate gambling. Like they know it. XRP is evil, not just bad, they're evil because they have conned people into believing that there is some value behind the scenes when there's not. And they are dumping their token on the market. They're never buying XRP, they're only selling XRP. They made it up out of thin air. They only ever sell, they never buy. And if you own it, you're being scammed. And again, the team behind it is just evil. They are evil, and everybody else in Bitcoin, in the crypto world, that has stayed evil long enough has gone to zero. So I hope and pray the day will come when the same happens with Ripple Labs and XRP because they deserve it. They are scammers and they are evil, and I hope they get their just desserts, through the natural causes that seem to happen, and that's how it usually goes. So Stay safe out there, everyone, and keep yourself safe from scammers, including XRP.